In this video, I'll show you my workflow of exporting low poly models to Godot, and I also show you some tips and tricks to make your low poly world look almost the same inside both Godot and Blender. Inspired by Infenzia, the great low poly expert, this is my color palette. The albedo contains 10 different color hues in 10 different shades, repeated in 9 different saturation levels. The same pattern is repeated 16 times. Why, you may ask? A look at the roughness map reveals the secret. Each repeated section represents a different roughness level, enabling me to enjoy PBR shading to its fullest. Not without a metallic map, of course. This tiny little section here is reserved for emission map because I love neons. It is important to make the emission section fully rough, otherwise some funny reflections may appear behind the glow effect, and that's not gonna look good. So here I have these textures. Let's import them in Blender. The albedo and emission maps should be sRGB, but it is extremely important to set roughness and metallic maps to non-color. Don't forget to set the texture interpolation to closest or it won't work correctly. Set the emission strength to 20. It's a matter of taste, you can use any number you like. Now we need to do some setup in Blender EV Renderer. This is how to use an HDR environment map. I love Polyhaven, link in the description. And we also need to enable bloom or the emission won't work. Don't touch the intensity and the other settings here. Godot emission doesn't look the same as EV. We'll do emission adjustments inside Godot instead. And this palette model is UV mapped in such a way to show me all coloring possibilities. You can easily adjust the UV and see how each color is gonna look in all shading and roughness levels for both metals and non-metals. Now it's time to export the palette to Godot. There are two main options and I'll cover them both. But before that, let's make a brand new Godot project. Make a 3D scene and add the world environment node. Save the scene and import the HDR map. Set it up in the world environment node. Add a new sky and choose panorama sky material. Load the HDR texture. To make it look exactly like Blender, turn the HDR sky 90 degrees around y-axis. Okay, back to importing the palette. The first option is to directly use the Blender file. Before that, you need to navigate to Project, Project Settings, File System, Import, and make sure Blender is enabled. Then go to Editor, Editor Settings, File System, Import, and add your Blender 3.x installation directory to the path. Then you will be able to simply drag and drop your Blender files into your project and use them directly. As you see, the mesh has no color, and the reason is that we need to place the textures used by the Blender file inside Godot project directory, and we also need to tell Blender to use these new textures. Don't forget to set the metallic and roughness maps back to non-color. And also reload the HDR texture to make it use the one in Godot project directory. Save the Blender file and now we see some colors, but it's definitely wrong. We need to set the compression to lossless when we use a color palette like this. It got better, but something is still not working. I forgot to mention, we also need to turn off the Godot default view for sunlight if we want to mimic the Blender look, but that was not causing the problem. So let's investigate the material. To be able to see it, we need to make the children of the node editable. And now under the mesh surface 0, we see the material. It is using the roughness map blue channel for the metallic and the roughness map green channel for the roughness data. There is also another problem. The emission strength is not mapped to energy multiplier. Fixing these problems every time you import the mesh is a pain in the I have a neat solution for that, but let's first try glTF importer as well. Select the model inside Blender and choose File, Export glTF 2.0. This is the format Godot supports the best. Check selected objects under the Include section. Make sure vertex colors inside Data Mesh is turned off. And also apply modifiers if you are using any. Godot imports the new file automatically if you store it in the project directory. It has extracted the textures as well. Let's try it out. We need to make the compression lossless on the extracted textures too. It's working perfectly, but again the emission strength is not passed along, and it's so painful to fix this issue on each import. You have to make the children editable, make the mesh unique, then make the material unique, and then you can adjust the energy multiplier. Now here is the solution. Make a brand new material using the textures extracted by the glTF importer. Create new, resource, and choose a standard material. Name it matte_main_emissive. Plug in the textures and remember metallic map is stored in the blue channel and roughness is in the green channel. Plug in the emission and set the strength to 20. Double click on the GLB file and navigate to the Materials tab. Here we can force it to use our custom material instead of the one stored in the model. And also prevent it from extracting the textures again. Re-import, and now changing the original material will affect the model. Do the same thing for the Blender importer and now we are good to go. By the way, if you are enjoying my content, please like the video and leave a comment telling me what you want to see next. Thank you. Something is still off. The emission is not glowing. We need to set it up in the world environment node. Enable glow, but it doesn't look as intense as Blender. Increasing the intensity doesn't solve the problem. The reason is that we need to set the blend mode to screen or additive. Additive is too much, so let's stick to the screen mode. The HDR map is now overexposed, so we need to decrease the global intensity for the glow. But we have another problem. If we increase the energy multiplier in the material, we won't get much more glow. You may be tempted to increase the global intensity in the world environment node, but it makes the HDR map too bright. Decreasing the energy multiplier for the HDR sky is not an option because it ruins the lighting we are getting from the HDR map. Believe it or not, I was trying to fix this issue for many hours, and at last I found the right setting. Decrease the intensity back to 0.1 to make the HDR map look the same as Blender, and increase HDR luminance cap to the highest number. This is kinda the upper limit to the glowing effect, and that is why increasing the energy multiplier for emission in the material didn't do much. The issue is now solved, and we have our emission object without washing out the HDR map. There are two additional options in the world environment node to check. Set tone map to filmic and set the white value to 6. Turn on SSAO and SSR in both Godot and Blender. We are done. If I change the Blender file and save it, it will immediately show up in the Godot editor. And fortunately it remembers to use our custom material. Now let's try some other low poly models which use the same material and color palette. I'm gonna use the blend file. Make the blend file use the textures inside Godot folder and tell Godot importer to use the custom material. How cool is that? Let's change something in the Blender file. And everything is working perfectly. That was my workflow for importing 3D models into Godot. Keep it in mind that if you are not using a color palette like mine, you need to keep the textures compression set to VRAM Compressed to enjoy mip mapping and performance boost. But for a small palette for a low poly world, setting it to lossless is the way to go. Subscribe and hit the bell because I'm gonna share all the tips I learn as I progress further in Godot world. Thank you for watching and I'll catch you up in the next video.